I was working the help desk at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris when an American woman walked up to me looking absolutely panicked. She held out her phone, showing a Google Maps route, and said, "Excuse me, why does it say my hotel is only 2 kilometers away, but the taxi wants to charge me for 20 miles?" I blinked at her. She was dead serious. I explained that 2 kilometers is about 1 mile. She stared at me like I'd just told her the earth was flat. "But it says 2, she insisted. 2 is more than 1. I had to pull up a conversion chart on my phone. She looked at it for a solid 30 seconds before muttering, "Well, that's confusing," and walking away. That was my introduction to a very specific type of confusion that happens when Americans venture into Europe. My cousin works at a train station in Amsterdam. He told me about the day an American guy came running up to the ticket counter, sweating and out of breath. "I need to catch the 1400 train to Brussels," the guy gasped. My cousin looked at him. "You mean the 2 p.m. train?" The American's face went blank. No, the 1400 train. "It's on my ticket." My cousin pointed at the departure board. "Sir, that's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We use 24-hour time here." The guy actually argued with him. He pulled out his phone and started Googling whether 1400 was a real number. When he finally understood, he'd already missed his train. My cousin said he just stood there staring at the board like it had personally betrayed him. I once saw an American couple in a restaurant in Barcelona completely lose their minds over the menu. They kept calling the waiter over, asking why everything was so cheap. "These prices can't be right," the husband said. "This says the steak is only 15. The waiter tried to explain those were euros, not dollars. The wife interrupted him. "But 15 is 15, she said. The waiter gave up and just brought them their food. When the bill came, they looked genuinely shocked that it cost more than $15. They'd somehow convinced themselves that European prices were just magically lower. They left a $2 tip on a €60 meal because they thought they were being generous. The waiter told me later he wasn't even mad. He was just impressed by the confidence. And then there was the guy in Rome who got into a full argument with a taxi driver because the meter showed 25 degrees Celsius. He thought he was being charged €25 per degree of heat. The driver had to explain 3 separate times that it was just the temperature display. The American didn't believe him until another passenger translated. Even then, he seemed suspicious. These kinds of mix-ups happen every single day across Europe. And honestly, they never stop being entertaining. My friend works at a rental car office in Munich. She said an American family came in to pick up their reservation and immediately started complaining. "This car is way too small," the dad said, pointing at a perfectly normal sedan. "We reserved a mid-size." My friend checked the booking. They had indeed reserved a mid-size by European standards. The dad kept insisting he needed something bigger. "Where's your SUV section?" he asked. She explained that most Europeans don't drive massive SUVs because the streets are narrow and parking is tight. The mom chimed in. "Well, how do people transport their families?" My friend just stared. "In cars like this one?" she said. They grudgingly took the car. 20 minutes later, they called from a medieval town center stuck between 2 buildings, asking why European streets weren't built wider. My friend had to explain that the roads were 500 years old. The dad said, "Well, someone should really update those. There's a hotel in Prague where I worked front desk for 2 summers. One afternoon, an American guest came down from his room looking confused. "Hey, so I can't figure out the light switches," he said. I asked what the problem was. He explained that the lights in his room kept turning off automatically when he left. "It's like the room doesn't want me to waste electricity or something," he said. I smiled and told him that yes, that's exactly what it is. The key card slot by the door controls the power. He looked offended. "That's insane," he said. "What if I want to leave my laptop charging while I'm out?" I suggested he use a random card in the slot. He asked why Europe was so obsessed with controlling people's electricity. I didn't have a good answer for that one. He spent the rest of his stay convinced it was some kind of surveillance thing. My brother drives for a rideshare app in London. He picked up an American tourist who spent the entire ride critiquing British driving. "You guys drive on the wrong side," the passenger said. My brother corrected him politely. "We drive on the left side, actually. About 70 countries do." The American shook his head. "Nah, man, it's the wrong side. Everyone knows you're supposed to drive on the right." My brother asked if he meant right as in correct or right as in direction. The guy didn't see the difference. He then asked why British people haven't switched yet to make it easier for tourists. My brother told him the UK had been driving on the left for centuries. The American suggested maybe it was time for an update. "Like for globalization," he said. My brother told me he thought about driving the wrong way just to make a point, but decided against it. I used to work at a tourist information booth in Copenhagen. An American woman came up asking how to get to Sweden. I told her she could take a train across the bridge. "Wait, there's a bridge to Sweden?" she said. I confirmed. She looked stunned. I thought Sweden was way far away. I pulled up a map and showed her. Sweden is literally right there, across a narrow strip of water. She studied the map like she was discovering a new continent. "So I could just walk there?" she asked. I explained the bridge is for cars and trains, not pedestrians. But yes, Sweden is very close. She seemed almost disappointed. "I told everyone back home I was going to 2 completely different countries," she said. "Now it doesn't sound as impressive." I assured her it was still impressive. She didn't look convinced. At the airport in Lisbon, I watched an American couple argue with a gate agent about their luggage weight. Their bags were over the limit. "But we weighed them in pounds," the husband protested. The agent explained that Europe uses kilograms. The wife jumped in. "Okay, but how were we supposed to know that?" The agent, very calmly, said that it's listed on their booking confirmation. The husband pulled out his phone and scrolled through emails. Sure enough, it said kilograms right there. He looked up. "Well, it should have been more obvious," he said. They ended up paying the fee, but not before the wife suggested that airlines should just use one system worldwide to avoid confusion. The agent said, "That's actually what we do. Kilograms is the international standard." The couple walked away, muttering about how nothing made sense anymore. I felt bad for the agent. She handled it better than I would have. My girlfriend worked at a cafe in Vienna. One morning, an American tourist ordered a coffee and asked for it to go. She started to make it when he interrupted. "Wait, can I get like a large?" She asked what size he wanted. He said, "You know, a large, like a Starbucks venti." She told him they don't have those sizes. He looked around the cafe confused. "So what do you have?" She listed the options: espresso, cappuccino, melange. He blinked. "Do you have just like a regular coffee? Medium? Cream and sugar?" She made him an Americano. When she handed it to him in a normal-sized cup, he looked disappointed. "This is it?" he asked. She nodded. He took a sip, shrugged, and said, "I guess Europeans just don't drink a lot of coffee." She told me later she had to walk into the back room to laugh. The irony was too much. There's a bakery in Berlin where my cousin works. An American woman came in one afternoon and pointed at a pretzel. "How much is this?" she asked. My cousin said €2. The woman pulled out a handful of change and started counting American quarters. My cousin gently stopped her. "We use euros here," she said. The woman looked annoyed. "I know that. I'm just seeing if I have enough." My cousin explained that American coins don't work in Germany. The woman seemed genuinely surprised. "But money is money," she said. My cousin told her she'd need to exchange currency. The woman huffed and left. She came back an hour later with euros and bought the pretzel. But she made sure to mention that this would be so much easier if everyone just used dollars. I was sitting in a restaurant in Brussels when I overheard an American couple trying to pay their bill. The waiter brought the check and walked away. They sat there for 10 minutes looking around expectantly. Finally, the husband flagged down another server. "Excuse me, we're ready to pay," he said, like it was a question. The server pointed to the check on the table. "Yes, whenever you're ready." The couple looked confused. "Aren't you going to take our card?" they asked. The server explained they could pay at the counter or wait, and he'd come back. The wife leaned over to her husband and whispered, "Do they not want a tip?" Loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. They eventually figured it out, but they left the money on the table and practically ran out. The server told me later they left €3 on a €40 meal. He said it happens constantly. My roommate is a tour guide in Athens. She said an American tourist on her group once asked, very seriously, why Greeks didn't speak English as their first language. "I mean, wouldn't it be easier?" The tourist said. My roommate explained that Greek people speak Greek because they're in Greece. The tourist nodded but still looked puzzled. "Yeah, but like for tourists," she clarified. My roommate told her that millions of tourists visit Greece every year and manage fine. The woman said, "Right, but it would just be more convenient for everyone if there was one language." My roommate said she didn't even know how to respond to that. Another person in the group pointed out that English isn't even the most spoken language in the world. The American woman said, "Wait, it's not?" The rest of the tour was very awkward. At a grocery store in Stockholm, I saw an American guy lose his mind at the checkout. He'd grabbed what he thought was orange juice. When he got to the register, the cashier told him the price. $8 for juice?" he said loudly. The cashier corrected him. "It's not juice. It's alcohol. That's why it's expensive." The guy looked at the bottle. Sure enough, it said alcoholic beverage right on the label. He insisted he'd grabbed it from the juice section. The cashier explained that Sweden has strict alcohol laws, so anything over a certain percentage is sold in special areas. The guy accused the store of tricking tourists. The cashier, completely deadpan, said, "Sir, you picked this up from a section labeled alcohol." The American just stood there holding the bottle before finally saying, "Well, you should label it better." He bought it anyway, out of spite, I think. I watched him walk out, carrying his $8 orange-flavored liquor, looking deeply frustrated with Scandinavian retail practices. I worked at a bookstore in Edinburgh that sold a lot of maps and travel guides. An American customer came in asking for a map of England. I showed him the UK section. He picked up a map of Scotland and said, "No, this is Scotland. I need England." I explained that he was currently in Scotland. He looked at me like I was messing with him. "Wait, I'm not in England right now?" I told him Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland. He pulled out his phone and checked Google Maps. His face went through several emotions. "I thought Scotland was in England," he finally said. I told him Scotland is part of the UK, but it's a separate country. He asked what the difference was. I did my best to explain. He left without buying anything, but I saw him later taking photos of signs that said Scotland on them. I think he wanted proof for his friends. My dad's friend is a history teacher in Paris. He does tours of the city for extra money. He said an American tourist once asked him, very confidently, if the Eiffel Tower was built to celebrate France winning World War II. My dad's friend said no. It was built in 1889 for the World's Fair. The tourist looked skeptical. "Are you sure?" he asked. My dad's friend, a literal history teacher, said yes, he was sure. The tourist pulled out his phone to Google it. When he saw my dad's friend was right, he said, "Huh? I could have sworn I learned that in school." My dad's friend asked what school taught him the Eiffel Tower was a World War II monument. The guy couldn't remember. The rest of the tour group was just standing there in silence. My dad's friend said it's moments like that where he questions his career choices. There's a museum in Amsterdam where I used to volunteer. An American family came through the Anne Frank house exhibit. Afterward, the teenage daughter asked me why Anne Frank didn't just leave Amsterdam if things were so dangerous. I explained, as gently as possible, that Jewish people were being persecuted and couldn't freely move around. She said, "Yeah, but couldn't she just go to America?" I told her that immigration was extremely restricted and difficult. She seemed unconvinced. "America takes everyone," she said. Her parents overheard and quickly ushered her away, apologizing. I understood she was young and maybe hadn't learned the full history yet, but it was still a jarring moment. Education systems really do vary wildly. My co-worker at a hostel in Dublin told me about an American guest who asked where the border checkpoint between Ireland and Northern Ireland was. My co-worker explained it's an open border. The American asked how they keep track of who's crossing. My co-worker said they don't really need to. It's part of the common travel area. The American was baffled. So I can just walk between two countries? My co-worker said yes. The guest asked if that was legal. My co-worker assured him it was completely normal. The American spent his entire visit trying to figure out the trick behind it. He was convinced there had to be some kind of catch. My co-worker said he checked out still looking suspicious about the whole arrangement. At a train station in Brussels, I overheard an American tourist ask an information clerk which trains go to Europe. The clerk paused. "You're in Europe," she said carefully. The tourist shook his head. "No, I mean like Europe. You know, the main countries." The clerk asked what he meant by the main countries. He listed France, Italy, Germany. The clerk explained that Belgium is also in Europe and those countries are accessible by train from here. The tourist said, "Wait, Belgium is in Europe?" The clerk said yes. The tourist looked around the station like he was seeing it for the first time. "I thought this was just Brussels," he said. The clerk told me later she needed a coffee break after that conversation. I completely understood. I saw an American woman in a bookstore in Copenhagen holding a map of Scandinavia. She was talking to her friend. "Okay, so if Denmark is the one up top, where's Finland?" Her friend pointed vaguely at the map. "Isn't that one?" The first woman squinted. "That's Norway." They debated for several minutes. Finally, they asked the cashier. The cashier pointed out where Finland is. Both women looked shocked. "Wait, Finland isn't even connected?" one said. The cashier confirmed that Finland is separate from Denmark. The woman thanked her but still seemed confused. As they left, I heard one say, "Geography is so weird over here." The cashier caught my eye, and we both smiled. It was the kind of moment that makes you appreciate how big and complicated the world really is. The thing about all these stories is that they keep happening. Every single day, somewhere in Europe, an American tourist is discovering that Celsius exists, or that military time isn't actually military, or that the metric system is used by literally almost every country on Earth. And look, I get it. It's disorienting to travel somewhere that does things differently. Street signs look different. Money feels like Monopoly cash at first. Dates are written backwards. Everything is in kilometers and kilograms and 24-hour time. Your phone doesn't work the same. The outlets are shaped wrong. People don't tip. Restaurants don't bring the check until you ask. Coffee comes in tiny cups. It's a lot to adjust to. But that's also kind of the whole point of traveling, isn't it? You go somewhere new, and you learn that your way of doing things isn't the only way. Sometimes it's not even the most common way. And, yeah, there's going to be moments where you feel confused or out of place or like everyone else got a manual that you didn't. That's normal. What makes these stories funny isn't that Americans are making mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when they travel. It's the confidence. It's the absolute certainty that the rest of the world is wrong and just needs to get with the program. I was back at that airport help desk last month, and another American tourist came up to me. She wanted to know why her GPS kept giving her directions in kilometers. "Is there a way to change it to miles?" she asked. I showed her the settings. She watched me switch it and then said, "Why doesn't it just default to miles?" I explained that the app probably detects your location and adjusts. She nodded slowly. "That makes sense, I guess." Then she paused. "But like, how do French people know how far things are in kilometers?" I told her they grow up with it, the same way Americans grow up with miles. She thought about this. "Weird," she finally said. Then she thanked me and walked away. I think about that interaction a lot. Not because it was particularly funny or dramatic, but because it perfectly captures the whole thing. We all grow up thinking our system is normal and everyone else's is weird. It takes traveling and making mistakes and asking questions to realize that normal is relative. Those American tourists who argue about the temperature display or get confused by military time or can't figure out why Sweden is so close to Denmark? They're not dumb. They're just learning that the world is bigger and stranger and more varied than they realized. And honestly, that's a pretty valuable lesson, even if it comes with a few facepalm moments along the way. Trust me, these stories never stop coming. And every single one reminds me why traveling is so important. Because the world doesn't run on one system, and that's actually pretty beautiful. Even